and I'm melting. Welcome back to the acoustic guitar build series, and we've got to create some bracing stock for the braces for our acoustic guitar. And if you saw in the video splitting wood for structural reasons, you will have seen me take this lump of spruce and do this and this. And I just want to explain a little bit more about what that's achieved. So come down here and I'll show you. We've got our piece of timber and we can see the rings clearly so that we can see the grain, and then down the edge of the timber we're seeing the edges of those section through those ring lines down the trunk of the tree, and we can see that the lines, I hope you can see the lines there, but they are running parallel with this sawn edge, so we have a pretty good idea that when we cut down the middle of this we're going to get parallel grain, and having split it, that's confirmed it. It's come straight down parallel with the sawn edge, and we have a lovely straight piece of wood which we can now plane, and we know that the grain fibres are running parallel with that edge. But that's our tangential edge. Now we need a radial edge perpendicular to that, so we've done another split, but it's a different story with this one, because what's happened is the edge was not parallel with the sawn edges. The grain was running across it, and in fact the grain has kinked slightly as it's come across. We've got fairly straight grain there, and we've got fairly straight grain there. You see that? But it kinks in the middle, just here. There's a bit of a break point. Now, fortunately for what I want, I can cut the wood here and still have enough material for the long braces in this section. I can plane that, and I can plane this section for the shorter braces, and we have perfectly parallel grain. If I was to plane the whole of this face flat, we'd have a slight bend in the grain. Let me think. The grain would be coming, yeah, we'd end up with effectively a bend in the grain that way. Do I mean that way? Yes. If I take a section through that, we know that the grain is kinking in the middle, so if we were to just flatten the whole of this edge, we wouldn't have one continuous straight piece of grain. So I'm going to cut this in two. I'm just going to digress momentarily to talk about grain direction. Now, having split our wood, we've got lovely parallel grain, and we have a piece of wood which we can plane, and we can plane it in either direction. It's easy to work. We can chisel it in either direction when the braces are on the guitar, and regardless of the strength that we've achieved, because we've got parallel grain, we've also got a piece of wood which is much easier to work with. But if we hadn't cleaved it, and we forget for the moment about the strength considerations, if we'd have taken this piece of wood, we would find that it's much easier to plane in that direction than it is in that direction. And the reason being that the grain fibres coming up out of the surface that way, and so when we're planing with those fibres. We're not tearing into the ends of them, but if we try to plane that end, we're catching the ends of the fibres, and we're lifting the fibres, and it's trickier to plane. So we say with that piece of wood that it has a direction, that the grain is running in that direction. But this isn't really true. What we're talking about really is the angle of the fibres rather than the direction of the fibres. Because those fibres do have a natural direction, let's say skyward. We don't know from this, I don't think you can tell looking at this piece of wood whether the tree was growing like that with the sky up here and the fibres coming up that way, or whether the tree was growing that way. And I don't think it makes any difference to us when we're working the wood. But I've often wondered, can you tell from a piece of wood where the top of the tree was, just by looking at a small section there? Can you tell which direction the fibres were growing in, which direction was up? I don't think you can, but I'd be interested to know the answer, and I'm sure with a bit of research I can find this out. But maybe people can tell me this in the comments. And maybe it varies from species to species. I suspect you'd need a microscope to determine this, but I don't believe it makes any difference to how you work the wood, whether the tree was growing that way up or that way up. And certainly for us here, it makes no difference. But this is something I've often wondered, because the front of guitars, are you looking at the front, if you stand the guitar vertically upwards, was the tree growing that way, or was the tree growing upside down? And does it vary from guitar to guitar? I'm pretty sure it does, because I'm pretty sure you can't tell which way is up. But it's something I've always been curious about, and I'm wondering if there's an answer. There must be an answer. I'm just wondering what it is. Answer in the comments, please. Here's my bracing plan, and I'm going to cut the wood in two here so that it gives me maximum options. I can get the long braces out, and I can get some of the other braces out of the remaining piece, and it gives me maximum options, and hopefully I get the most number of guitars out of this one piece of wood. I've got two reference straight edges now that are parallel with the grain, but what I don't have is a right angle at the end. So I think I'm going to get this on the bandsaw and square it off before I plane this face completely flat. Probably taking too thick a shaving. What I now have are two true edges, and they are square to each other on both pieces. And all the grain is parallel to those two edges, so we can go back to the bandsaw and cut these up into the braces we need. Perfectly quarter sawn. Here's the problem using this particular Shepak bandsaw. It's a hobby bandsaw, and it's got a narrow 1/4 inch blade, and it's not really accurate enough for this type of work. At first that looks a perfectly acceptable cut, but when you look at what you're left over with, there's a slight curve due to the blade drifting and moving as we're cutting. So if we put this stock back through again, and I'm exaggerating here, we're going to be going in at this angle and out at this angle, and maybe the blade is going to add another little bit of a wobble to it, and it'll probably accentuate the crown, which is what I've experienced before trying to do these type of cuts on this bandsaw. So either I've got to plane this flat every time, or I think the easier answer is just to go do it on the table saw, which means there's a lot more waste because the kerf is much wider, but I think it's just going to be easier overall. There, you see why we use push sticks. It's now 31 degrees in here and I'm melting. But I have 12 pieces of bracing stock from which I can cut out my braces. They're all thicknessed to 6.5mm, courtesy of my wonderful drum sander. And I have 3 perfect edges, 1, 2, 3, that I know are parallel to the grain. So this will give me maximum strength for bracing the guitar. Next video I will prepare the top. This is the template for said top. Cut out the sound hole, get the rosette nice and flat, and mark out where I'm going to get all the braces, and who knows, maybe I'll even glue some of the braces on. I've also got to sort the bridge plate out. I haven't got the stock for that yet. But yeah, if you found this video useful, if you liked it, hit like, subscribe, share the video, and we'll see you in the next video of this rather long running series. But we will get there. It will be great. It's going to be a fantastic guitar.